Season 1, Bloody Sunday, a Case, 2 Human Networks. The trial of trial judge O J Simpson shook American public opinion, turning Simpson into the most famous criminal accuser in American history. So famous that just say OJ is that people know who it is. Featured host Larry King also said on CNN, "If we had an interview schedule with God, OJ, then we would lose God." The 9-month longest court case in California history, with a court fee of $20 million. As many as 91% of TV viewers watched the trial and 142 million heard hearings via radio and television. Even more research has claimed that the United States lost more than $25 billion as workers were reluctant to track down. Late Sunday afternoon, June 12, 1994, the couple Boz Tepe and his wife Bettina Rasmussen, living next door to house number 875 in Brentwood, hear the dog barking endlessly. Surprised by the strange behavior of the dog, the couple led the dog out to help it cool down. The dog dragged them to the house number 875 and stopped, staring at the shadowy shady tree. From the dog's point of view, the couple saw two corpses lying beneath the steps. At 1300 on June 13, the patrol car carrying two Los Angeles police officers, Robert Risk and Miguel Terrazas, was on the scene. Inspector Risk cautiously walked through the small pool of blood on the paved path to the dead woman's body. The victim wears a short black dress, bloody and wounded. To her right, a bush was left of a bloody man, wearing the light brown shirt, blue jeans, eyes still wide. After identifying both of the victims dead, Risk and Terrazas returned to the headquarters for assistance. A few minutes later, Lieutenant Martin Kuhn and two staff members, Edward McGowan and Richard Walker, came to the scene and blocked the traffic. Inspector Risk and a police patrolman confirmed that the woman was Nicole Brown Simpson, owner of house number 875 and ex-wife O J Simpson, a former football player and sports commentator for NBC. Inside the house, police found two children of the victim, 9-year-old Sydney and Justin, 6, were still asleep. They woke them up, dressed them up and took them to the police station, waiting to identify them. At this time, the identity of the male victim is unknown. At 2:10 a.m., surveillance detective Ron Phillips and detective Mark Furman came to the scene with the naked eye, not touching dead bodies nor coming too close to the scene directly. At 4:25, after detectives Tom Lang and Phil Van Natter arrived, they were briefed by Phillips about the incident and led them to the scene. Because of not touching the corpses, the two detectives could not determine the cause of death. They were about 2 meters away from the corpse but still saw some objects next to the man's body. It was a set of keys, a dark blue cap, a pager, a bloody white envelope. Other leather gloves for the left hand are also bloody. These things lie under the bush a few centimeters away from Nicole Brown. In addition, they spot blood-stained footprints from the dead body to the backyard of the building. Detectives were contacted by O J Simpson to pick him up. As Nicole's ex-husband, O J Simpson was originally considered a suspect. However, at the time, there was no evidence that he was directly involved in the case. Detectives arrived at the home of O J Simpson on Rockingham Boulevard. Outside the house is a white Ford Bronco. They tried to call home but failed. While waiting, Detective Furman wandered around and accidentally flashed the torch on the Ford Bronco. He found a blood stain on the car's body near the front door handle. At this point, the detectives found the landlord's phone number. They repeatedly called on the cell phones but no one answered. They decide to go inside the house. Detective Furman climbs the rock and opens the gate from inside. They continued to knock. The bell rang but the house remained silent. However, when walking around the house to a row of 3 bungalows outside, they knocked on the first wooden door and a man opened the door. This person introduces himself as Simpson's friend Kato Kalin. At the second bungalow, they meet a young girl named Arnell Simpson, daughter of Simpson. She takes the detectives to the main house but the house is empty. Kalin's inquiries, they learned he and Simpson were present at a McDonald's restaurant in Santa Monica last night. Later, Kalin enters the guest house and Simpson enters the main house. At 22:45, Kalin said he heard 3 big bangs from the sound and vibration were so great that Kalin thought of earthquakes. Kalin carries a flashlight to check out a car parked outside. It was the Simpson. Had to go to Los Angeles airport, catch a late flight to Chicago. Minutes later, Simpson loaded his luggage and went straight. Meanwhile, Arnell contacted his father's private assistant and learned of his father's address at the O'Hare Plaza Hotel in Chicago. Detective Phillips phoned Simpson, informing his ex-wife that he had died. Despite seeming distressed by that information and fears for his 2 children, Simpson never asked about the death of his ex-wife. Simpson just announced that it would catch an early flight to Los Angeles. Detective Tom Lang decides to inform the Nicole family before the news of the murder is reported. He went to Nicole's parents' house at 6:21 and talked to her father, Lou Brown. When he told him, he heard a woman scream and cry, "O J did it. O J killed her. I know how that guy will kill her too." Quote, "It was Denise's voice." Investigation. After leaving Nicole's parents' home, investigators began investigating the crime scene and Simpson's Rockingham building, where there are indications of a connection to the crime scene. Detective Furman next to the wooden house Cato Kalin was wearing was a right-handed leather gloves, bloody and along with the left glove found next to the victim's body. Red blood streaks from Ford Broncon's door lead up to Simpson's front door. While Detective Furman remained at the scene, Detective Van Atta returned to the headquarters to prepare a search warrant to enter J. Simpson's home. By 8 a.m. on June 13, the press reporters were crowded at the scene. In order to protect Nicole's body from the reporter's lens and protect evidence on the corpse, Detective Lang had covered the body with a blanket from the house. When more inspectors arrived at the scene, Detective Lang along with the inspector and assistant checked Nicole's body. On the victim's back, there is a strange blood stain, possibly from the killer's blood or from the assault gun. After taking pictures of Nicole's body from all angles, they wrapped the corpse again, carrying it to the road and boarding the police car. Similar work was done with the male body. The inspector examined the victim's clothing and found a purse in the back pocket of his jeans. The driver's license in the wallet shows the victim as Ronald Lyle Goldman, 25. The left glove in the bush is also checked. This is a large, expensive leather glove with linen and Aris isotoner. Meanwhile, while sitting in the office, Detective Van Atta saw O J Simpson being handcuffed and patrolled by police. Van Atta did not want Simpson handcuffed, so he took his cuff buckle. When the cuffs were open, the detective noticed that the middle finger on Simpson's left arm was covered with bandages. Detective Van Atta did not intend to capture Simpson at this time, because when Simpson was arrested, Van Atta had only a maximum of 48 hours to file charges, and that was not enough time for colleagues to complete investigations or wait for blood samples to be taken at the scene. However, they needed to question Simpson and took him to the police building in 150 North Los Angeles at 12:15. Here, Simpson was consulted with his lawyers, including the lawyer Skip Taft. Police officers were surprised to find Simpson's lawyers relaxed about the police questioning the clients, even leaving the clients alone and eating lunch. At 13:35, the interrogation between Detective Lang and Van Atta with Simpson began and lasted 37 minutes. At the point, the detective had no concrete evidence of accusing Simpson, and they knew that whenever Simpson could stand up and leave. Anyway, he has not yet been officially detained and does not need to answer any questions. However, Simpson agreed to let the police take blood samples, fingerprints, and fingerprints on the finger. Detectives only obtained the result of the interrogation, with no information whatsoever that they paid attention. Simpson's testimony contained some conflicting points, such as the timing of the Ford Bronco, the recent hand injured. The two detectives returned to the office at 15:30. Simpson accompanied two lawyers. They reported information to Captain Gartland, in charge of murders and looting. By this time, they believed that Simpson had killed his ex-wife and Ronald Goldman. Meanwhile, the Chicago police arrived at the 915-room O'Hare Plaza Hotel, where Simpson stayed the night before. They found a broken glass in the tub. Simpson had broken his arm before going to Chicago, and then the wound was bleeding from the Detective Van Atta returned to the Rockingham building to get blood samples as quickly as possible. Taking the blood from the scene, he handed the blood sample envelope to criminologist colleague Dennis Fung. Fung checked the envelope and read it outside. Get it from Van Atta at 17:20 on June 13, 1994, and transfer it to your assistant to board the car. The entire process was carried out in the presence of a reporter surrounded by Rockingham. Later, during the trial, Simpson's attorneys sought to tap into this procedural justification of the police. Earlier, Dennis Fung and his assistant went to collect evidence inside Simpson's house. The Los Angeles Police Department usually uses a camera to record the scene when ransacking the suspects to avoid accusations of interfering with the scene. Before the room was filmed at 15 o'clock, Raymond saw the navy blue socks on the bed and wrapped it around. However, the cameramen had forgotten to adjust the time on the camcorder after a long period of unused. As a result, Simpson's lawyers group later accused the police of putting the socks on the scene. One thing to note is that the pair is an important piece of evidence because DNA analysis shows that it is infected with Nicole's blood. However, evidence is slowly closing around marriage when murdered 35-year-old Nicole Brown Simpson. She was born on May 19, 1959 in Germany, growing up into a beautiful, tall, blonde-haired woman with the perfect beauty of a Southern California beach. According to friends, Nicole is a very simple woman and does not know what to do to live independently because she has no career skills. She served at the Daisy nightclub in Beverly Hills and met O J Simpson for the first time. At the time, 18-year-old Nicole Simpson and 30-years-old married. 8 years later, Simpson divorced his wife and married Nicole on February 2, 1985. Nicole moved to Simpson's magnificent home in Brentwood on Rockingham Boulevard and lived a seemingly good life. Until January 1992, they broke up. She and her children rented a house on Gretna Greenway. Nicole filed for divorce and became celibate on October 15. The marriage's worsening, Simpson increasingly preferred violence to his wife. On the eve of the New Year's Eve in 1989, police went to the home on Rockingham Boulevard. Simpson was later charged with assaulting his wife, sentenced to 120 hours of public labor and sentenced to 2 years in prison. On October 25, 1993, Nicole had to call 911. Upon arriving at Nicole's house at Gretna Greenway, a remote police officer heard men screaming in unintelligible words. As they approached, they saw Simpson in front of the house rocking into the door. At the time, Nicole made no accusations against her ex-husband, but later told police Lieutenant Craig Lally of the Los Angeles Police Department that she feared Simpson and his mood. When O.J. went crazy, he has a wild look. His eyes are dark, cold as a beast. Quote, when Nicole was married, Simpson also had sex with her. Even when pregnant with her first child, Nicole had to call the police because Simpson used a baseball bat to beat her car. Nicole and the police also made no accusations against Simpson. Actually, according to Nicole's diary, Simpson's domestic violence has been around since 1977. Up to the trial of Nicole and Goldman in 1995, the Los Angeles prosecutor had a list of 62 inverted cases, physical and mental treatment caused by Simpson, not to mention countless threats. In addition to violence, Nicole also suffered from the Simpsons' flower bloom. A friend of Nicole responded to the police during an interrogation that the root problem of the marriage was Simpson's constant flirting with many women. Nicole is always worried about her husband's transient sexual encounters and is afraid of her husband getting AIDS. Nicole suffered from beatings from her husband. As a therapist, Nicole was always beaten, not exactly 24 hours a day, but the frequency of the beatings was extreme high. Nicole's mother, Juditha, told police that a month before the murder, Nicole told her mother that Simpson had said, "If I see you with another man, I will kill you." Quote. Meanwhile, after splitting up with Simpson, Nicole has many relationships, most of which are casual relationships. While living at his Gretna Greenway home, Nicole gave a young man named Brian Gerard Kalin, nicknamed Cato, an empty room. Kalin becomes a caregiver and does not pay for Nicole. When Nicole bought an apartment in the South Bundy and moved in December 1993, she gave Kalin a room. Simpson, obviously concerned about Nicole's involvement with a young man living in the house, asked Kalin to stay in his cabin at Rockingham. In the afternoon of the murder, Nicole and her children, parents and friends went to see Sydney's daughter's dance performance at school. Simpson also joined but sat separately and did not talk to everyone. After the performance, they went to a fine Italian restaurant for dinner. Here, Nicole introduced the family to a male waitress named Ronald Goldman, a close friend she'd known a few months ago. Nicole's family had dinner and left the restaurant on the afternoon of June 15, 1994. A driver Simpson hired to transport him to the airport after the killings told police that Simpson told him to be in Rockingham before 22:45. Alan arrived early 20 minutes trying to call the door but no one came out. At 2250, Alan saw a dark-haired man hurrying from the side door into the house. Later, Alan called the door and a man named Simpson responded, saying that he had fallen asleep and would down right now. When Simpson came down, he sweated and asked to turn on air conditioning all the way to the airport. Case investigators also received a call from Jill Shively, Nicole's neighbor. She said that on Sunday evening, while driving to the nearby market, she saw the Ford Bronco cross the red light and nearly crashed into another car. She recognized the Ford Bronco driver Simpson. On June 16, preliminary DNA test results on a Rockingham Mittens testimony revealed that it contained blood from Simpson and both victims. Evidence suggests Simpson is a murderer. On the same day, family and friends buried Nicole at Lake Forest Cemetery, 72 kilometers from downtown Los Angeles. Nicole's mother recounted that Simpson had spit next to the coffin of his ex-wife, kissed her lips, and apologized. On June 17, after the arrest of Simpson, Detective Lang called Robert Shapiro, Simpson's lawyer, told the lawyer to go with the client to the police headquarters at 11 o'clock. At the time, Simpson was at a house named Robert Kardashian in San Fernando Valley after the funeral of Nicole. By 12:35, when Simpson and his lawyer were not seen, 3 patrol cars were sent to the Kardashian to arrest him. At the time, the police in use of Simpson drives the Ford Bronco with his best friend Al Cowling. Los Angeles police held a press conference, announcing the release of Simpson. Lawyer Shapiro appeared on television and called on Simpson to present the police immediately. After discovering Cowling and Simpson were driving the Ford Bronco north on Interstate 5 in Orange County, the scene, he ordered the car to pull over to the sidewalk and stop. Cowling continues to drive but decelerates and calls 911 on his cell phone, telling the police that Simpson is suicidal and has a gun close to his head. Chase. Soon the Ford Bronco appeared on a number of helicopters carrying reporters and cameramen into the police helicopters. With 95 million followers, this slow pace has become one of the most viewed events in American television history. For the past 50 years, there is only one event that can match the chase of viewership: the fact that the spacecraft landed on the moon, so much so that it looks like the scene in a movie about war. At one point, the 7th helicopter had to give up on supplies, causing the channel to catch up with Channel 5's rival. On the ground, the viewer crowded the nearby roads and bridges. They shouting as if watching the parade on Independence Day. When approaching 405, Cowling was allowed to go straight to Simpson's home in Rockingham and was accepted by the police. Police also immediately dispatched troops to the Simpson home. Meanwhile, Orange County police continued to follow the Simpson carriage, even though it went to another area. The Ford Bronco arrived in Rockingham at 19:50. The long and dramatic chase ended when Al Cowling parked the car in front of the Simpson door and shut it down. Here, a Los Angeles County police detachment of 27 men, an attacking team, a specialist team and a negotiating team were present. On top of that, the helicopter is still full of the sky, and the camcorder is operating at full capacity to serve television audiences across the country, and the world is glued to the TV screen. Nearly an hour later, after hearing the negotiating team and Cowling convinced, Simpson finally got out of the Ford Bronco and surrendered. The chase officially ended, but the hunt for justice has just begun. Detective confrontation lawyer O J Simpson was arrested on June 17, 1994, but was not tried until January 25, 1995. On Simpson's day, the detectives found in Simpson's car a travel bag containing a passport, a fake mustache and a gun. 2 days later, Simpson pleaded guilty and was detained at the Los Angeles County Jail. In the next 15 months from the date of his arrest, Simpson stays in a cell in an area where only he is the only prisoner. Outside the cell is a common room with fixtures, TVs, sports magazines, newspapers and a payphone. Even though a prisoner is suspected of killing 2 human lives, Simpson is not being treated like a murder suspect. For the prosecution, the case was relatively straightforward and there was a mountain of evidence against Simpson. He had a violent relationship with Nicole, jealous of her since the divorce. He bought a knife of the same size and shape as the murder weapon. He dropped the glove at the crime scene, shoes of the same size as the shoe that led to the scene. His blood mixed with the victim's blood. He is motivated, has the opportunity, and there is no offense evidence during the murder. To Simpson's defense lawyer, the case was simpler. They see the clients innocent, trapped by a bunch of dark, lying, shameless policemen. The attorneys draw a picture of a Simpson victim, a black victim being whitelisted by the legal system. However, Simpson cannot symbolize the racial divide between blacks and whites in America. He marries white women, lives in the white world, works with them, plays golf with them, interacts with them. Simpson is the representative of the rich division is more accurate, showing that money can easily buy justice. In the months leading up to the hearing, Simpson's lawyers had devised a defense strategy based on the evidence the police had trapped their clients. They begin to attack the detective Mark Fuhrman. On July 25, 1994, an article in the New Yorker magazine reported the detective Fuhrman had deliberately placed the glove near Simpson's home. The article also unleashes the disturbing behavior of his former detective Fuhrman and his racist stance. Obviously, the author has largely relied on talking to lawyer Robert Shapiro to write this article. Meanwhile, for the Los Angeles Police Department detectives, they were shocked at the accusation that Detective Fuhrman put the glove near the Simpson home. He was the 17th police officer to the scene, after many other police officers took a look at the scene and no one noticed the second glove near the two victims. However, on August 18, 1994, a defense lawyer filed a motion to see Fuhrman's personnel records. Detectives involved in the case were allegedly violated by lawyer Shapiro when he entered Simpson's home by himself. Meanwhile, the detective said that they entered the building for fear of his safety, not because he considered him a suspect. At the end of September, the defense was so informative that they accused not only detectives Fuhrman but also other members of the Los Angeles Police Department as deliberately arranging evidence at both crime scenes. The law team has been quoted by Time magazine as having been involved with Simpson. On September 26, lawyers demanded the hair samples of Detective Fuhrman and other detectives, as well as ransacked the clothes the detectives wore at the cars they drove on the day of the case investigation. They demanded to take photos of the sheriff's shoes to see if anyone had any bloody shoes hidden around Nicole's house. Lawyers continue to blow up. On the 5th of October, lawyer Gerald U. Ellman accused the detective collusion together to lie and give false evidence. In addition to Fuhrman, Detective Van Natter, who drafted Simpson's arrest warrant, was also attacked by a team of lawyers who argued that the arrest warranted the problem. Finally, on November 8, 1994, a jury was selected to hear the case. The jury consists of 8 African Americans, 2 Americans, a Latino and only 1 white person. Newsweek later commented that prosecutors almost lost the criminal trial on the day the majority African-American jury was formed. The battle begins. Opening of the trial, prosecutors Marcia Clark and Chris Darden presented the jury case. They claimed that Simpson made the killing at around 22:15, when Nicole's neighbors heard the first barking dog. They then presented the evidence against Simpson. The next day, Simpson's defense lawyers came to the rescue. Attorney Johnny Cochran said Simpson was an innocent, wrongly accused person from the prosecutor who wanted to win the case at all costs. After Cochran presented his arguments against the prosecutor, Simpson stood up, approached the jury area, showing them his scarred and injured knees to prove he was not healthy enough to kill anyone. The defender undertook a total assault to prove the innocent client with 2 weapons. One was the racist view of the police, the other was a blood sample and the police's DNA. Detective Fuhrman is still the main target of Simpson's law team. The magistrate made a serious mistake when he allowed the lawyer to ask Mr. Fuhrman if he had used the word black 10 years ago. In fact, 10 years ago, Detective Fuhrman's racist attitude does not mean nothing to this investigation. Mr. Fuhrman has become a means by which lawyers help the clients escape, to the extent that the father of Ronald Goldman's victim, Fred, had to say at a press conference, "Now the trial has turned into a detective trial." Fuhrman. The attorney's team has taken the trial too far. In a lack of restraint, Fred rebelled against Cochran, saying the lawyer was the worst racist. But it seems that Simpson's attorney has reached its goal of accusing Mr. Fuhrman of being a dangerous cop, tending to fabricate false information against the African-American accused. Criminologist Dennis Fung and his assistant was put on the cutting board by a lawyer. Lawyer Peter Neufeld said that Raymond and his assistants were negligent in collecting blood samples at the crime scene. They showed a video showing her assistant clutching a dirty hand, then rubbed with a dirty hand the evidence clip, dropping some blood-stained gauze. She admitted having made a mistake but denied deliberately changing the evidence. The lawyers also claimed that the police had taken Simpson's blood from the police station and then took him to the scene to trap him. Prosecutors put up their own Cardis leather gloves. According to the catalog of glove shops, Nicole Brown bought 2 pairs of leather gloves on December 20, 1990. The glove was only produced in limited quantities of 300 pairs and was sold at Bloomingdale department store in New York from 1989 to 1992. The store sold 240 pairs and returned the glove to the manufacturer export. The gloves are striking and easy to pick up. The prosecutor pictured the press and tape showing Simpson wearing the glove on the 1993 and 1994 football television shows. In court, Van Natter, who has the same size as Simpson, tried a pair of gloves identical to the one on the scene. He swatted it easily. Prosecutor Christopher Darden asked Simpson to try in court. In front of the camera, Simpson wore gloves, saying it. Richard Rubin, a former vice president of gloves maker Aris Gloves, explained that because of the moisture, the gloves had shrunk in size. At the end of the trial, Simpson tried another pair of the same size and this time it fit. However, the prosecutor's initial defeat in relation to the glove seemed unlikely to be reversed even though Simpson was wearing a pair of gloves. On shoe imprints at the scene, an FBI agent and a leading expert in shoe imprints confirmed that it was the stamp of Italian-made Bruno Mali, retailing at $160 per double and only distributed to 40 U.S. retailers. Only 300 pairs of size 12, Simpson's shoe size, are sold. Only 9% of the American population wears shoes of the size 12. Simpson says, "I do not have this pair of shoes, that these shoes are ugly." However, on September 26, 1993, a photo of the Associated Press photographer Simpson showed him wearing a pair of Bruno Mali shoes at the Rich Stadium in New York. However, this information is not very impressive with the jury. Another FBI hair and yarn expert told the court about the hairs found on Goldman's shirt and in a baseball cap at the scene. According to experts, the hair in the hat and the 12 strands on the victim's shirt matched Simpson's hair characteristics. The hair on the Simpsons glove is similar to Nicole and Goldman's hair. Cotton and black cotton yarn on the Goldman shirt is the fabric found on the socks in Simpson's bedroom. The expert confirmed that the fabric was pulled from the baseball cap and matched the fabric on the seam of the glove. In addition, the fabric on the Ford Bronco also matches the fabric on the glove found near the Simpson house and the baseball cap. Again, this information does not affect the jury, so too many of the evidence mountains offered by the prosecutor were lost before the jury goes, either because the prosecutor prepared and presented the evidence is not thorough, or because the lawyers of Simpson too clever to turn the evidence according to their own opinion, so the jury suspected reasonable. The decision of the jury in this case is an interesting part to Judgment Day. The struggle between the prosecutor and the lawyer lasted forever, and at the end it broke the record of the longest court case in California history. The jury is now exhausted after being quarantined for 9 months. Judge Lance A. Ito was criticized for leaving the trial time out of control and because he seemed unable to handle Simpson's lawyers. Prosecutors Clark and Darden tried their best to minimize the cost. The detective involved Detective Furman, admitting he was racist and a bad detective, but they begged the jury to not use this reason to decide Simpson's innocence. Ms. Clark said, "They have a mountain of evidence and all point to a person, the defendant," and Darden summed it up in stages, leading the jury to figure out the case, denying accusations that the collusion police had ensnared Simpson. He said, "If you rush to convict, why police wait 5 days to catch Simpson?" He pleaded, "Consider the evidence and make the right decision." Meanwhile, attorney Cochran ended his defense by adding oil to a controversial trial. Cochran walloped Detective Furman is the Nazi tycoon Adolf Hitler, using words such as genocide, insanity, the worst nightmare of the United States, and the embodiment of the devil, to talk about him. Court followers feeling Cochran's cynical attack contributed to the verdict. On the afternoon of September 29, 1995, the Ito judge told the jury about the hotel, telling them not to make a decision until October 2nd. At 9:16 a.m., in the conference room at the High Court building, the jury began to review the hearing. By 14:28, jury members informed Ito that they had made a ruling. Ito announced in court that the verdict will be announced at 10 a.m. the next day, October 3rd. On the day of the verdict, police helicopters circled the courthouse, patrol cars patrolled downtown Los Angeles, fences were set up in front of the court to block traffic. People around the courthouse are crowded and police are pushed back out of the area. Hundreds of police were deployed on nearby streets. The Justice Department has coordinated with federal law enforcement agencies to prepare a plan for dealing with unexpected situations. Even U.S. President Bill Clinton has been told he may have to assist the California government with the case. It seems that the trial of a murder has turned into a comprehensive emergency. 9:45 a.m., the 3rd of October, the courtroom is packed. People sit orderly while jury in place. The judge asked the panel president to give the verdict to court clerk Deirdre Robertson. In a nervous mood, the secretary's voice faltered as she passed the verdict. She read aloud, California Supreme Court, Los Angeles County, on the trial of Orenthal James Simpson, BA 0097211. We, the jury, found that defendant Orenthal James Simpson was not guilty of murder. It was anticipated to respond to this determination. Blacks all over the United States jumped joyfully and the whites were overwhelmed. The trial is an unprecedented press event in America, and it is also great news for the rest of the world. In the UK, independent television network editor Michael Jeremy commented, I think many people have looked at American society through the lens of the O J Simpson case, in which they see the division of races, families and money have the potential to affect the court system. Quote, a British newspaper reporter, Barry Wigmore, told CNN News, the courtroom is like a circus. There are more entertaining factors than finding truth and justice. Quote, he said his newspaper would go a 5-page article on the case with the headline, What a Joke. In Italy, La Stampa said, it is difficult for the Italians to understand the American legal system. We cannot understand how the American system works or does not work. A television commentator in Brazil commented, what is actually being brought to trial is racism in the United States. Most commentators and observers support this statement. Attempts by prosecutors Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden in the case have been documented. They were $14,330 and $10,747 respectively.